Zia, thank you very much for coming. There's a whole range of questions that we can ask you, right from your World Bank days to working at SAP for almost a decade now, and then starting your own venture. The fundamental question for any entrepreneur to learn from you is, having worked at World Bank and at the big company like SAP, where they have good entrepreneurship initiatives, how do you get the idea and the courage to come out of a cushy job and take this risk of starting your own venture?
Obviously, it was a bad decision. No, I'm just kidding. Look, it was a tough decision in some sense, and in other ways it wasn't. I was very fortunate to move up in SAP pretty fast and get to a pretty senior position. But it's also a 10-year period, and I felt I'd learned a lot there. And living in Silicon Valley, it's tough to not want to go do a smaller company, not want to do a startup. Because every day you're surrounded by people at a cocktail event, at a dinner that are, what are you doing now, and so on. And so for me, I really look at my career as a marathon. It's about having a series of experiences and how those experiences come together. And so, my work at the World Bank on healthcare, and then Goldman Sachs, hardcore investment banking in New York, phenomenal time at SAP. It was time to do a smaller company. And for me, it was about going and learning how to be a CEO. And I don't think it matters whether you are a CEO of a 20, 50-person company. You're CEO, you're at the end of the day, it's your responsibility. And so that was my draw towards being a CEO. And I picked an industry and a topic. Streetline does smart parking that people were surprised. What do you mean parking? You've been doing enterprise software. What are you doing in this? It's now fortunately turned out to be a very interesting, exciting industry, solving a very basic problem that people hadn't thought about solving from that angle. So I would suggest to people, if you have the opportunity, do a large company, do a small company. It's a combination of the two that makes it powerful. If you want to be an entrepreneur, that doesn't mean you go start something yourself. You can go work for a small company that's 20, 30, 40 people. Sometimes people mix up the fact of, I want to be an entrepreneur. Well, that doesn't mean taking a PowerPoint and founding something. You can join something and learn to do that, and that's equally good as well.
So this is the way some people will look at it. From Goldman Sachs to SAP, you're pretty much eating at the French Laundry, and now you've come back to a point where you're going to the corner sandwich shop, right? So to speak, the analogy. Maybe it's easier because you have made it, but Silicon Valley culture is slightly different. Those who have made it make it more, and those who haven't made it at all obviously would want to do it. So for people outside of Silicon Valley who look up to you as a role model in the emerging economies, how do you encourage them when they haven't been on that cycle before and they see these challenges? Because not only that they don't have the proper ecosystem, the bigger challenge for them is having the right mentors and having the right kind of funding.
Yeah, but there's one thing implicit in your question, which I would challenge a little bit. The French Laundry sandwich shop analogy essentially applies that it's a money issue, right? And I don't think it's a money issue. I mean, today, again, if you go join a 20, 30-person startup in Silicon Valley, you're going to get paid a pretty good amount of cash. Now, it's likely to be 20, 30% lower than what you'd get in a large company, but it's not going to be peanuts. It's a myth that people are not going to get paid at all. You'll get paid enough, you'll be able to live, maybe you'll be able to save a little bit of money. But in return, you should be getting equity. You should not be doing this out of the goodness of your heart. And so you should make an economic decision. And in this case, it's a combination of the cash and the equity where you make that decision. So if you're coming out of school, again, if you have enough to live in a one-bedroom apartment and you can pay your school loans, that's fine. You have a 50, 60-year career in front of you, right? Don't worry about a 2 or 3 year time horizon. It's kind of irrelevant from that perspective. And I would say, most importantly, find a team and a manager that you really want to work with. Especially in the early days. It doesn't really matter what you do, honestly. It doesn't matter which company you're with. What matters is that the person you're reporting up to, the work that you're doing every single day, regardless of what the title is outside the door or what the company is, if that's a fulfilling experience for you, that's going to be great for your career going forward. And go do it for 2, 3, 4 years, and if you don't like it, switch and go try something else. If people spend agonize over their career decisions, I think a little too much.
Let me take you back to the early days after your Harvard days. You know, it is every MBA's dream, I think, to land a job at Goldman Sachs and similar other investment banks. Until the internet companies started hitting really big, that was the ultimate goal for people. Now that you have played both sides of the equation, how do you see people who are now working in that particular industry and then compare the charm between the two?
Between banking and
Yeah, investment banking and so there's two different, it's cheese and chalk, but I just still want to draw some analogy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's if I talk to my friends who are in banking today, the heyday of banking is no longer there. Investment banking. I mean, you still get paid good money and so on, but it's much more of a regulated industry. There are many more restrictions, and honestly, the pay is not what it used to be as well. Right? At very senior levels, yes, but not when you're starting off. But if you enjoy finance, then go do that. It doesn't matter. For me, honestly, Goldman was a mistake. Right? I mean, as you said, business school students are the most risk-averse people you'll ever see. There's a huge herd mentality. It's, oh my God, all these people are going to McKinsey and BCG and Goldman and Morgan Stanley. Unless I do that, I'm a failure. So I got caught up in that kind of metric and went to Goldman. Great firm, Goldman, but I wasn't a finance guy. I mean, I understand finance and enjoy it, but I don't want to sit at 3 o'clock in the morning and figure out the intricacies of a bond offering. And so that's why I left for SAP in Silicon Valley. So if you can find something that you really love doing, it's gold. And most people don't find that for their entire careers. And so for me, trying different things until you kind of figure this out, and that's what life is about as well. And you'll make money along the way.
Let's talk about the current role, the CEO, and the current startup that you're working on.
So yeah, so Streetline, I joined the company. Actually, when I left SAP, I joined two venture firms, Sutter Hill Ventures in Norwest as an entrepreneur in residence. And I did that for 6-7 months, looking at a range of different companies. And the idea was, do I start something? Do I join something? And I honed in on Streetline, which at that point was 15, 16 people. It only had a couple of weeks of cash left, if you will. The team had built this sensor and network to look at parking, but there wasn't a clear business plan. There wasn't a single salesperson or marketing person. And I enjoy finding things that other people think don't matter. And that's what I did at SAP. And this was another opportunity. And honestly, the first 6 months, people would look at me a little strange, oh, you couldn't find a job. You went from, an EVP at SAP to working for a parking company. What does that mean? Now they're not laughing as much because it's become, in that industry, we're reinventing it. So we essentially put sensors on the ground in each parking spot. It detects the presence of a car in real time. And then there's a series of applications, both for the cities, universities, and for consumers, to manage that data and information. So it's taking a very old problem, a massive problem in the world today, and turning it on its head. So that's been exciting. I don't know if it will be a financial success, but at least so far, it's by far the market leader and is taking the effort to kind of reinvent the industry.
So on a company's track path, which is ultimately the exit strategy, when you look at it from a founder CEO perspective, there are different challenges. Not just the product is good, you have to continuously thrive and be at the edge. Funding is not as much a challenge with being you in the CEO seat. So for those of us who are listening to you, where do you see one or two biggest challenges for you as an entrepreneur leading this company?
That's a good question. I think, I've had to learn a lot. I thought I was good at SAP. I wasn't. I mean, there's nothing that prepares you for being a CEO. I think that's a unique role. And again, it doesn't matter what size the company is. And even being in a smaller environment. So I think one thing is the emotional variance. The highs are higher, the lows are lower in a small company. In SAP, I'd run to lunch and somebody would ask me for a signature on a $10 million deal. I'd sign it and I'd run away for lunch. Here, you get a $5,000 revenue and everybody gets excited. And the day can literally have a high point, like a new customer willing to sign up for another 2 months. And then in the afternoon, one of your engineers said they got a better job. And so that up and down is something that you really have to become comfortable with. And I'm still learning to do that, but that's one thing. The second thing is, your resources are so limited, and it forces you, or it should force you. Some people spend the money and they don't get it, but it should force you to make much tougher decisions every single day. And I think one of the insightful things I learned from RVC is it's not about doing the maximum amount. It's about doing the optimum amount given the resources you have. And that's a different way to look at the world, right? Is this thought of a minimally viable product. There's 50 things we should do, 10 that we have to do, otherwise we'll break down as a company, and we can only do 3. And you just hope to God that on a daily basis, on average, you'll make slightly better decisions than not. And if you make the bad decisions, wake up, dust yourself off, and keep going. So the pace of it, the ambiguity of it, so hats off to those entrepreneurs. I have a much higher respect for those folks. But after this gig, do I go do another small company? Do I go back to a large company? I mean, those options now will be open for me, where before it was only a large company. So,
Ziad, thank you, and wishing you all the very best for the success of this company.
great. Thank you for your time. I enjoyed it.